Season number 104 of the NFL set to kick off tonight right there at Soldier Field. It's the Bears and the Packers on NBC. And over the next 90 minutes, we are here to get you set for football. We are going all over the map. We'll have live reports on 10 teams, plus some national perspective from Pro Football Talk Zone Mike Florio and NBC NFL analyst Chris Sims, as well as the fantasy advice you need from our guru himself, Josh Norris. And we welcome you to the NFL Kickoff Show. Thank you for joining us from across the country. Here in our NBC Sports Philadelphia studios, I'm Derek Gunn, and I'm joined by the former 12-year NFL vet, Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers, my man Barrett Brooks. And
yes, sir.
I shouldn't ask you this question, but how excited are you that football is finally back?
This is it, man. This is my time of the year. It's fall. The leaves are going to start changing. This is when you can go out there and play a gladiator sports. We could choke people and not get arrested for it.
You can't say
That's
choke.
Why I love
You can't say choke.
Football is football, man, and we need to stop getting away from that.
They changed the rules, man.
And that's the problem. Football needs to be football the way it used to be, man.
All right, now, aside from the Eagles, which we watch closely, what other team out there are you most intrigued by?
Well, look at the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. At this point, Big Red, Andy Reid has some of the best weapons in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Travis Kelce at tight end.
Sure.
Tyreek Hill, one of the fastest players in the NFL, take the top off any defense. But now they have Shady McCoy at running back.
Yeah.
A perfect complement, and Big Red loves this guy. He's worked with this offense before. This is a match made in heaven for him. So I'd like to see what their offenses are going to do and how they mix, you know, as far as getting that team going.
All right, now, throughout the course of this show, we will be taking your questions. Just use the hashtag NFL Kickoff NBC to send them our way. We'll also get some late-breaking news we're going to pass along as Antonio Brown with the Raiders Insider. He'll talk about that in a short while coming up. All right, now let's kick things off with the Bears, who are hosting the Packers tonight. The Packers have the edge at quarterback, of course, with Aaron Rodgers, but not when it comes to chugging beer. Check out Rodgers' effort at a Bucs playoff game earlier this year. Meanwhile, there was Mitchell Trubisky, and he's just down in this one at a White Sox game like it's water. B. Brooks, man, that's impressive right there.
Absolutely. You know, in fact, you know, he's got an offensive lineman right next to him. That's how you go out there and have some fun, man. Bring your O-line out, buy a couple beers, take care of the hands that take care of you, but he's got to chug a little more, man. Watch the technique on the other side of him. You look at Long. Long knows how to make it happen, you know. So, I mean, as he goes out there, if you analyze it, all right, he's getting it down. Look how fast Long did. He got his down real fast. Trubisky, he has a little he has to go to.
All right, let's head right now to the Windy City to check in with our Bears insider, J.J. Stankovich. And, J.J., thanks for being with us. Happy football season to you, my man.
Hey, you know what's funny about those chugging videos is that Aaron Rodgers was actually not happy that he kind of got dragged for being bad at chugging beer. That dude is so competitive. He actually was not happy about that.
Well, that's understandable when you hear about his competitive nature. I mean, the guy doesn't even want to lose a tiddlywink, so that's understandable. Now, we know that he can down a beer quickly, but Mitchell Trubisky, will he take the leap this season to become the guy who can win a game by himself, let's say?
I think he can. And, I mean, you guys in Philadelphia saw it. Had Cody Parkey not had that ridiculous double doink at the end of the wild card round, we would be talking about Mitch Trubisky as a guy who led a last-second playoff drive to win a game and send the Bears deeper into the playoffs. So I think he can do it. The question is, can he do it over the course of a full season? I think Mitch is going to make the incremental gains that the Bears have been talking about needing him to make. That's making better decisions with the football, not having, you know, sloppy footwork, not, you know, maybe hitting more balls downfield. It's going to be smaller gains. I don't think you're going to see him have a Patrick Mahomes season or a Deshaun Watson season. But everything that we have heard and seen with Trubisky over the last month tells me he will make a step forward, and that should be a step forward enough to get the Bears back to the playoffs.
All right, has the city recovered from that double doink by Cody Parkey, lost to the Eagles in the playoffs?
I don't know if the city's recovered, because you're going to see it tonight. If Eddie Pinheiro misses a field goal, it is going to be pandemonium at Soldier Field. But the Bears themselves have moved on. I know there was a lot made about Matt Nagy showing that 43-yard miss over and over to his team back in the spring. But if you look about how they went about their kicking competition once they got to Bourbonnais for training camp, it was conventional. It was Eddie Pinheiro versus Elliott Fry. Pinheiro won the job, and he will move forward with the Bears' trust to be their week one kicker. I think they know that rookie kickers usually aren't super successful. You guys saw it with Cody Parkey. He made the Pro Bowl his rookie year in Philadelphia. That's rare. Usually rookie kickers have a field goal percentage below 80. The question is, how long will the Bears stick with Pinheiro if he is missing some kicks early on in the season? For right now, though, they enter the season with a pretty good amount of trust, and that certainly has moved on from the double doink.
All right, they lose defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. He's now the head coach in Denver. He's replaced by Chuck Pagano. Is this defense still going to be one of the best defenses in the league?
Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller, Prince Amukamara, Leonard Floyd, Bilal Nichols, Eddie Goldman. There's so much talent on this defense. It is hard for me to see them taking a significant step backwards. Talking to every player in that locker room, they know how good this defense is, and Khalil Mack probably said it best. It's on the players to go out and play well, and that is exactly what Vic Fangio would have said last year. He wasn't a guy who took credit for the Bears being the best defense in the league, you know, him calling the plays, all that. It was the players playing well. There's so much talent on this defense that if you just insert a competent defensive coordinator, which Chuck Pagano is, this defense is still going to be one of the top 5 best in the league this year.
All right, JJ, we've got a Twitter question for you now. What in Bear Nation is feeling very confident tonight? He wants to know, how much do you think the Bears win by tonight?
I got them winning by 6. I got 23-17. I think it's maybe a more defensive game than we might be expecting, given, you know, Aaron Rodgers on one side, you know, the Bears with the offensive improvements they made on the other side. The Packers defense sneakily could be pretty good this year. Mike Pettine's a very good defensive coordinator. They added a lot of talent. Obviously, people around Chicago know Adrian Amos here, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, Darnell Savage, Rashawn Gary, both first-round picks. There's a lot of talent on that Packers defense. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game, but still 23-17. If the Bears win by 6, that is a great way to start their season.
All right, JJ, thank you for being with us. We're going to get back with you a little bit later in the show to get your season prediction on the Bears. Now, of course, throughout the show, our fantasy football expert from NBC Sports Network, Josh Norris, is going to give us some help providing a sleeper, a keeper, or a bust from each team we break down. So, Josh, start us off with the Bears, if you will.
Big things are ahead for David Montgomery in his rookie season, and that's why he's a keeper. It was a bit of an interesting offseason for the Bears backfield, right? They deal Jordan Howard. Tariq Cohen is obviously there, and his role is unchanged. Then they signed Mike Davis. We all get excited for Mike Davis. Then, with very, very few draft picks, they go up and trade for David Montgomery. Then they use him in the first game of the preseason, and we haven't seen him since. Some might take that as a negative. I take it as a positive. I take that as us believing, and the Bears believing, that David Montgomery is going to be their workhorse, feature, #1 back on that team.
And watch season number 100 kickoff tonight on NBC. It's the Packers at Soldier Field to take on the Bears, the longest rivalry in pro football. Coverage begins at 7:30 Eastern Time. All right, Bear. Last year it was the Bears landing Khalil Mack before the season, sent shockwaves through them. This year we've saw some crazy moves, but before we get to the crazy moves, your thoughts on the Chicago Bears? I mean, they went 12-4 last year. Can this team duplicate that kind of success?
Well, it seems like all those individuals who left Andy Reid's coaching tree have definitely taken a step forward. Matt Nagy has a great offense at this point. You know, he's really customized his offense around Mitchell Trubisky. He's put players around him now, just like say with Montgomery coming out of Iowa State. Now they're going to have the consistency to make sure that they run and pass at probably a 50% rate, as opposed to everybody else going more so 60 or 70% pass to 30% running. So it really puts them in an awkward position of being a good team, starting early. They have never been favored going into the season early. So it's really good for them to go out there and show people that they are the team to be reckoned with in the NFC.
All right, we're talking about some of the crazy moves that have happened recently in the NFL. Jadeveon Clowney goes from the Texans to the Seahawks. Laramie Tunsil from the Dolphins to the Texans. And then the monster contracts that Jared Goff and Ezekiel Elliott get. This is crazy, man, to start right before a season.
Absolutely. You know, and it's showing me this. A lot of these players are getting a little more power. You know, they're starting to shift a little bit from the owners to now shift towards the players. Jadeveon Clowney demanding a trade at this point. Zeke Elliott sitting out to get his money. $90 million for a running back. It used to be that running backs were like the forgotten position. You don't invest in a running back because they have such a short playing time. Now it's starting to shift a little bit. AB, he turns around, Brown goes to the Raiders. They're getting their power back, and it's good for me to see, and it's healthy for me to see the players are starting to do it. And then Andrew Luck, decides he wants to retire. He took his life in his own hands and said, look, I'm going to, sit out and go in a different direction. My body can't take it anymore. I can't continue to go out there and put my body through this type of situation. So he retires. I like the fact that players are starting to get a little more power in the whole scheme of things in the NFL.
And, of course, as Barry just talked about, Andrew Luck retires less than 2 weeks ago. What a crazy offseason it's been.
Exactly.
And what a fun season it's going to be that we're going to see upcoming. And for more, we send it to Pro Football Talk's own Mike Florio and Chris Sims.
Thanks, Derek and Chris Sims. Plenty of changes for the NFL and for one of the teams that made it to the final 8 last year, with Andrew Luck retired as the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Jacoby Brissett takes over. How do you think Brissett is going to perform in Luck's absence?
Well, he's not Andrew Luck, okay? I mean, that's Andrew Luck's special. He's was one of the 5 best quarterbacks in all of football for my money. But Jacoby Brissett has a very similar skill set, and really is certainly a starting caliber NFL quarterback. Mike, you know, we've heard this a lot, even through Frank Reich in the offseason, just how impressed he was with Brissett and his play. Brissett's big, he's athletic, he throws a great deep ball. The Indianapolis Colts are going to be fine. They don't have to change anything on what they do on their offensive formula. The thing that comes down to it for me, Mike, and you've heard me say this, is I think Andrew Luck is worth 2 wins a year because he's been one of the clutchest quarterbacks in all of football. I mean, there's a reason we call him Captain Andrew and all those things because, man, if there's 8 minutes left in the game and the Colts were down by 10, he, more times or not, would bring them back or certainly give them a lead, and maybe their defense blew it either way. It's can Jacoby Brissett just deliver those handful of clutch situations in the fourth quarter, to me, is going to be the difference of them going 10-6 or 8-8 or 11-5 and 9-7, whatever it may be.
And so much different than 2 years ago, Chris, when Jacoby Brissett shows up Labor Day weekend in a trade with the Patriots, goes on to start 15 games in the season that Andrew Luck lost to a shoulder problem. Right. This time around, Brissett's all in. He's there for the offseason program, taking most of the first-team reps. He's there for all of training camp in the preseason as the guy, and the Colts believe in him. They've resisted all opportunities to trade Jacoby Brissett, and now laying the foundation for him to be the franchise quarterback in Indianapolis if he can indeed deliver the way that they believe he can. We're not quite sure what the NFL is going to be delivering to all of us with replay review of pass interference, Chris. A lot of questions, a lot of concerns. What's your number one worry as it relates to replay review being applied to pass interference calls and non-calls?
I think the biggest thing I worry about, especially after listening to Al Riveron, seeing examples, is really just the fan backlash when they see replays, because Al Riveron's made it pretty known. I mean, this is not a new rule. We're not changing rules. What we are doing is making one part of the game reviewable that's never been reviewable before, because it's a subjective call. And I think the one thing we've learned, clear and obvious, that the defender is significantly hindering the wide receiver is really the thing the NFL has to get out there, because I think we're going to see a lot of times where a coach is going to challenge a call or a non-call, and it's not going to get changed on the field or changed by Al Riveron back in New York. And I think fans are going to look at it and go, oh, but he had his hand on his shoulder, or his hand is on the waist. And Al Riveron's going to go, yes, his hand is on the waist, but I can't say that he's significantly hindering or changing the wide receiver. He could just have his hand there and it's placed on there. You know, there'll be other times where maybe there is a true grab and a pull or something like that, and he can see the turning of a body or something like that to where it does get overturned. But I think a lot of fans are going to be confused by the operation, and they're going to have to deal with a lot of public backlash is my biggest concern.
I'm just concerned, Chris, that old cliche we've heard for years, that when a call is overturned via replay review, it has to be something that 50 drunks in a bar would be unanimous about. Too many of these replay reviews of pass interference, specifically non-calls during the game, that are being reviewed for a possible dropping of a flag by Al Riveron from 345 Park Avenue in New York City, that it's not going to be 50 drunks in a bar. It's going to be Al Riveron's judgment based upon the available visual evidence. And he's going to say it's clear and obvious. It's clear and obvious to him. Would it be clear and obvious to 50 people who are looking at it? And that's my concern. There's going to be plenty of controversy over when and where and how Al Riveron chooses to drop that flag. Because I know I disagree with some of the ones he's shown the public as it relates to where he finds interference. Super Bowl 53, the Stephon Gilmore play, when Gilmore grabs the arm of Brandon Cooks, I look at that and they say he did not significantly hinder him because he fought through it. His arm's still in position to make the catch. Significantly hinder to me, grab it and hold it down. And they're going to have to do a great job of making sure people understand what pass interference is and isn't, so those 50 drunks in a bar are on the same page when they do overturn one of those rulings. We got to go. That's it from here. We're going to send it back to Derek Gunn in Philadelphia.
All right, guys, thank you. And Barry, do you share those concerns about the pass interference rule?
You know what? I'm old school, man.
Yeah.
I think players play, coaches coach,
Sure.
and officials officiate. I like the human error that goes into football games. You know, at times you're just not going to get the call. In fact, I played offensive line for 12 years, and there wasn't one play that I didn't hold. That's just the nature of how you play.
Sure.
You can call a holding play on every single play.
Yep.
It's just human error, and I like that part of it, man. So it's a rule. They change it. I got to live with it. But I'm like I said, I'm old school with that, man.
Of course, we mentioned the Bears playing on NBC tonight, where the Patriots take center stage on Sunday night against the Steelers. Some interesting offseason storylines from the defending champs. Tom Brady's Massachusetts mansion put on the market. Now, if you have $39.5 million, it could be yours. Brady also reworked his contract and essentially can control his own destiny after the season. His swimming pool's bigger than my house, man.
Bro, just let me stay in a cabana house. Let me stay in a
Look at
pool
that
house,
thing, man.
That's beautiful, bro. That's beautiful, man. It kind of look like half of your house, isn't it?
What?
Your house worth about $12 million, right?
12,000. All right, let's check in with our Patriots insider, Tom Curran up in Foxborough. Tom, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Now, what's your read on Tom Brady and his future? Could this be the last ride for Brady with the Patriots?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Derek, Barrett. Certainly could be. He is the one who asked for the ability to have autonomy at the end of the season. When the Patriots did their negotiation with him, he's stated a million times he wants to play until he's 45 years old. At least he definitely wants to play more after this season. And the Patriots weren't willing to put money down and an extended contract on a guy who's going to be 43. They don't know what it looks like at 43, nor do they know what it looks like at 42. Brady said, okay, you know what? I'll take the raise, but at the end of the year, you can't franchise me. So if we have a situation where you don't want me around and you want to lowball me or restrict my movement, you're not going to be able to do that. So the fact that he actually wanted that, lobbied for it, and secured it, has to put on the table the possibility that he will go and test free agency.
All right, Rob Gronkowski announced his retirement over the offseason by way of Instagram. Is this the last time we see him? Do they have enough weapons to fill the void at tight end?
We could spend 15 minutes on both of those. First on Gronk, it will be the last you see of him in New England. This retirement is going to stick. It's going to stick for a number of reasons, one of which is, despite his intimations that he's going to come back, that's for the brand. That's for Gronk Inc. That's for selling CBD or whatever else he wants to do. He understands that there's an interest in him coming back, so he's going to keep churning that buttermill to make sure people think that every announcement and every press conference he holds is going to be related to a return when it's actually about something entirely different. He's not going to come back, and I don't know if he ever comes back, if it would be to the New England Patriots. However, will it impact the offense? Incredibly so. Even though he had a down year last year because of injury, you're talking about a Hall of Fame tight end who, even if he didn't have the catches, fellas, he was drawing the attention with him.
All right, the defense carried them in the Super Bowl. Can this group continue to play at that level in 2019?
They might be even better. Even though they lost Brian Flores to go to Miami as their head coach, and Gerard Mayo was plucked from our set at NBC Sports Boston's Quick Slants to be a Patriots defensive coach and quite possibly the de facto defensive coordinator, this Patriots defense could be outstanding. The reason they have such extreme experience at the back end with what might be the best corner in football was Stephon Gilmore. Second level, they brought back Jamie Collins. Chase Winovich from Michigan is a tremendous rookie pass rusher, it looks like. And the addition of Michael Bennett gives them a different vibe. Trey Flowers was an all-around player on the front. You could put him anywhere. But Bennett's a penetrator, and this Patriots defense looks like it's going to be much more aggressive, as they were in the postseason last year, guys.
All right, Tom, time to check a question for you from Twitter. Now, Mike asks, who's the biggest obstacle in the Patriots' path to the Super Bowl?
I don't think there's any doubt at all it has to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, with that said, I just concluded by saying how impressive this Patriots defense is. What you do get into, and we saw it when the Patriots came back on the Atlanta Falcons, though, is when you have an offense that can't stay on the field or scores quickly, and this happened to the Atlanta offense in that Super Bowl, you wear down. So New England right now offensively is going to have to find an identity to help out that defense, and I'm wondering if it gets in to a game with Kansas City in the postseason, will Kansas City be able to wear that defense down if they have an improved enough defense themselves?
Hey, Tom, final question to you right now. How much fun do you have covering Bill Belichick?
I love it, man. I do. It's hard. It's tough. It's a tooth extraction.
Right.
You know, you might sometimes get your forehead peed on, but the bigger aspect of it is I'm covering history. I grew up here. I couldn't be luckier to have a chance to cover this team. That's what we want. You want to have something that was memorable. I lucked out.
All right, Tom, thank you. Stay right where you are. We're going to get back to you a little bit later in the show with your prediction on the Patriots. Now, let's go back to our man Josh Norris for his sleeper, keeper, or bust from the Patriots.
I think the football community has forgotten how good Sony Michel is and why he's a keeper for the 2019 season. In 3 playoff games last year, he saw 71 carries, 336 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And I understand it was a bit of a roller coaster of an offseason, right? He missed all of OTAs. Then the Patriots spent a 3rd-round pick on Damian Harris. But now he's peaking at the right time. The roller coaster has concluded, and he's at the top of the Patriots depth chart. I know some people are scared a little bit of this Patriots backfield, but it's James White in the pass-catching role, and it's Sony Michel in the touchdown-scoring role. He's absolutely a player I want to roster for the 2019 season.
You know, Barrett, a lot of times the highest form of flattery is when those on the outside looking in hate you. And this is about everybody who's not a Patriots fan hates the New England Patriots because they're so doggone successful.
They've been good for so long. You know, I played against them back in the day. When you have Belichick and you have Brady, I played against them back when I went to the year before I went to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
They beat us. It's supposed to be an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. They ended up beating us. You played against the Eagles. They beat the Eagles. I was playing back then. I've been retired for 12 years, and both of those guys are still winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So, you know, I still have that innate hate for them, but I have to respect them. Belichick, Brady, the best to ever do it.
All right, time to bring it right back into our own wheelhouse. The Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz got himself a new contract. He's healthy, and he provided one of the feel-good moments from training camp league-wide. Listen to this.
Oh my God. A couple years ago, huh? Yes. How you doing? Enjoy watching practice? Hey, Nate's over here. Say hi. You got that, buddy? There you go.
That was Wentz with young fan Giovanni Hamilton, who was stricken with a rare disease, but has used Wentz's recovery from his injury as his own inspiration. Barrett, stories like that, they just don't get any better, man.
No, it doesn't. In fact, 9 times out of 10, those type of instances give the player more so than the individual, you know, getting the autograph. I mean, that kid right there, that was so heartfelt and so sincere.
Yeah.
And I was only a couple feet away from
We were there, yes.
Yeah, and I almost started crying, you know. It just goes to show that, you know, this is definitely something that, you know, you as a player, you love that guy.
All right, right now we're going to head over to the Eagles practice facility where our Eagles insider, Reuben Frank, is standing by. Rube, this is all about Wentz and him staying healthy. But the big question is, can he stay healthy?
Why not? It's almost like it's all anybody talks about around here is whether Carson's going to get hurt. Where's this rule that he's got to get hurt? You know, he tore his knee, which a lot of quarterbacks have done in history. I'm convinced the stress fracture in his back was a product of him favoring that knee before it was fully healed, before he had his strength. We could see him last year. He didn't look fluid. He didn't look smooth. He didn't look like himself. Just the way he ran, the way he moved, he was favoring it. You could tell, and I think that led to the stress fracture. So I think both those injuries are related. He played 16 games as a rookie, which not a lot of quarterbacks do. Certainly none in Eagles history have done that. So there's no reason Carson Wentz can't stay healthy. He's taken big strides to get himself in the best shape of his life. The proverbial best shape of his life, which you hear from everybody. But for him, it's really true. He's focused on his diet. He's focused on stretching. He's focused on nutrition, on sleep, on doing everything within his control. You can always get hit. There can always be a freak play. But the way the league is trending, the rules are there to protect quarterbacks more than ever. I don't see any reason he can't start 16 games and, more importantly, finish 16 games.
Rube, GM Howie Roseman has surrounded him with an incredible number of offensive weapons. They seem to be absolutely loaded on offense. How dangerous can this offense be, man?
Yeah, you know, the Eagles haven't had the #1 offense in the NFL since 1948. And this could be the year. It's been a long drought. They've had good offenses. They've been #2 a few times, including 2017, the Super Bowl year. But I've never seen a group of weapons like this. And the key when you have this much talent, as you guys know, is keeping everybody happy. And I think they have a group they've got egos, they've got swagger and all that stuff. But I also think these guys will put the team first. If Deshaun doesn't get a target against the Falcons in week 2, I think he'll be okay. I think he's at a point in his life and his career where he's not going to pop off about it. I think the same's true with all these guys. If Goddard catches more passes than Zach Ertz is going to be okay with it as long as the team wins. So it's a tricky thing for a coach, and it's a tricky thing for a quarterback when you have this many guys. They go legit 4 deep if you include J.J. Arcega-Whiteside at receiver, 2 deep at tight end. They got running backs who can catch the ball, Corey Clement and Darren Sproles. And the other 2 guys, I think they're going to try to work in a passing game. There's only 1 ball, so that's the biggest challenge. The talent is there, but we've seen in the past that that's not always the most important thing. These guys have to stay unselfish and keep an eye on the bigger picture, which is winning football games. And if they do that, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, Rube, the Cowboys seem to be the biggest threat to the Eagles in terms of going after that divisional title. Cowboys shelling out big bucks left and right now. The Eagles always seem to have the salary cap situation under control. So who's in a better position long term? Is it the Eagles or Dallas?
That's an interesting question. You know, since 2014, the Cowboys have drafted 6 Pro Bowl players. The Eagles have drafted 1. And that's Carson Wentz. Dallas has more young talent on their roster right now than the Eagles. I think the Eagles are a better team now. I think they'll be a better team next year. You know, we'll see what happens with Amari Cooper. I think they'll get him signed. He's 25. Van Der Esch is 26. Zeke just turned 24. Dak's 24. So they've got a lot of young talent on that team, on the O-line. The Eagles are an older team. Their best players are 28 to 32, and it's something for the future they have to keep an eye on. Now, they've got young guys like Miles Sanders, like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, like Dillard at left tackle, like Goddard. Some of the young cornerbacks who could become stars. But as it stands right now, Dallas has the edge in young talent. But again, which quarterback is better? I think Dak is better than a lot of Eagles fans give him credit for. But if you put him up against Carson, I'll take Carson anytime. So if you have that elite young quarterback to build around for the next 10 years, I think you have an edge. But I'll tell you what, there haven't been a lot of stretches in history where the Eagles and Cowboys are both good. You know, from 79 to 81, they both made the playoffs 3 years in a row. But really, it's been rare. So I think this is what makes a real rivalry, is that both these teams are loaded. Both these teams are talented. Eagles haven't swept the Cowboys since 2011. And they have had trouble beating them, especially at home lately. So, you know, that's the big roadblock. And, you know, Eagles fans can say, you know, Dallas sucks and all that, but Dallas is pretty good. And the Eagles have to understand that. They have to go down to Texas and beat them, and they got to hold serve here at the Link.
Our own Reuben Frank dropping all kinds of knowledge for us. Rube, thanks for checking in. We'll get back to you later to get your predictions as well. Now let's go back to our man Josh Norris to get his fantasy take.
Deshaun Jackson is absolutely a sleeper at the wide receiver position this year. I understand. He's played 153 games. How can a player who has played that many games be a sleeper? Well, it's because he was being drafted around wide receiver 50 in drafts this year. He has never played with a quarterback quite like Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz has never played with one of the best vertical receivers in NFL history like Deshaun Jackson. If you can predict those big games, those spike games against great matchups where Deshaun Jackson can catch, 6 passes for 120 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns, it will be a massive, massive boost for your fantasy season. And this week against the Washington Redskins, Deshaun Jackson's averaged almost 16 points per game when facing his former team. So it might not be a bad week to start the season off as Deshaun Jackson as a starter.
All right, thank you, Josh. We know the Eagles well. We watch them. We talk about them day in and day out. Your thoughts on the Eagles? Now, everybody's panning them in already to win the NFC East, but I don't know if it's going to be that easy when you look at what Dallas is doing down there.
It's not. You know, both teams are built where they're supposed to be built, and that's at the offensive line, the defensive line. When you're built well in the trenches, it really gives you an even better outcome because now you have an offensive line that can run on the defensive line. It really puts them in a great position. Both teams are loaded with talent. I think the Eagles have a little more on offense, but defensively, that defense down in Dallas might be one of the best ones, not just in our division, but in the NFC.
All right, staying in the NFC East, we're going to head up the turnpike and talk about the Giants. Big Blue was in the headlines all offseason. They traded Odell Beckham. Then they drafted Daniel Jones, which everybody blasted at the time. Now, it looks like he's going to be the toast of the town eventually. Here he is in the preseason being swarmed by reporters while starter Eli Manning puts his shoes on all by himself.
Come on, man.
Now, Eli's had a great run, man. It's time to step aside and let the young guy take over.
No question, but that's true disrespect, man. You have a guy that won 2 Super Bowls sitting in his locker, and this guy hasn't even put on his pads in a real NFL game yet.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the beast. Eli understands it, but it doesn't mean he has to like it, man. Plus, he gets the Eli face. No, I love the Eli face.
All right, to get more on the Giants, time now to check in on the Giants with our owner, Ralph Acciano from SNY. Now, Ralph, Jones looks great in the preseason, but Eli Manning is still the man under center. But for how long will that last?
Well, that's entirely up to Eli Manning. If he plays well, there's a chance that it could last all season long. I think what the Giants want is for him to play great, to lead them to the playoffs, and to force them into a very difficult decision for next year. If they have to go to Daniel Jones this year, it means either that Manning is hurt or he has just struggled or the team is out of it early. In those cases, they'll have no problem looking towards the future right away. But if Manning is playing well, they do not intend to make this switch. They really do think that Manning has a lot left in his right arm.
All right, they traded Odell to the Browns in the offseason. Beckham has blasted the organization for the move. Analysts and fans have ripped him as well. But could the G-men be better off than we think they are?
Yeah, I think they could. I think there's a chance that they'll be a better overall team. That's what they're banking on. A lot of this move, a lot of the other moves they made as well, were about building a culture, building a team-first atmosphere. They really did not feel that Odell Beckham fit into that. He wasn't a bad guy, but I think they felt that he had just brought too much attention on himself. Obviously, he wasn't very supportive publicly of his quarterback. There were a lot of distractions with him. They think without those, they'll be fine. And they like their receiving core. Sterling Shepard they see as a #1 type receiver. Bringing in Golden Tate was a great move. It certainly hurts that he's suspended for 4 games, but between the two of them, with tight end Evan Ingram and of course Saquon Barkley, they think they have a lot of options in the passing game and that one guy won't be missed.
Hey, speaking of Saquon, he is perhaps the best back in the entire NFL, although Ezekiel Elliott will still have something to say about that. But what kind of numbers could Saquon put up this season?
It's hard to envision him doing better than he did last season. Those were tremendous numbers. They will feed him the ball probably more. I think his workload might increase a little bit. They want the offense to run through him. They might use him a little differently in the passing game instead of just being the dump-off guy out of the backfield. Maybe send him deep, send him on receiver-type routes. So there are different ways that they can use him. The one issue with him is going to be without Odell Beckham and knowing that the offense runs through him, he's going to be more of a focus of defenses than he was in the past. So you factor that in, and maybe it's hard to see those numbers improve. I think you're going to see a lot of the same, and maybe, in individual games, maybe he has more of an impact sometimes because, he's the guy that the Giants will look to in those crunch situations. They won't go to Odell anymore. They're going to go to Saquon, and even though everybody knows it, I think he's good enough to get the job done.
All right, Ralph Acciano with the breakdown on the Giants. He's pulling double duty for us because we're going to go back to him a little bit later on to talk about the Jets. Thank you, Ralph. Now, time to get back to our man, Josh Norris, as he weighs in on the G-men.
With Eli Manning at the helm, it might be a little difficult to get excited about the Giants' passing game, but I absolutely think that Sterling Shepard is a keeper for your fantasy season. In fact, his broken thumb really made him a tremendous value in drafts. He was going around and ended around wide receiver 39. I mean, it's amazing what not playing in the preseason can do to a player's perception because he's the odds-on favorite, Sterling Shepard is, to be the Giants' wide receiver 1 for the entire season. Without Odell last season, Sterling Shepard saw 26% of the Giants' targets headed in his direction. It would be shocking if he does not end the season as a top 36 wide receiver this year.
All right, so we headed north on the turnpike. Now we're going to detour and go south on I-95, and let's continue to delve deeper in the NFC East. Redskins saw their season fall apart last season when Alex Smith went down. Team brass probably didn't like seeing this over the offseason. Star cornerback Josh Norman hurdling a bull in Pamplona, Spain. Here's head coach Jay Gruden on the incident.
Josh Norman jumped over a bull. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I knew the bull wouldn't hit him. He avoids contact. No. Just kidding, Josh. Just kidding. No.
Wow, he just roasted Josh. Wow.
Come on, man. But you got to know better than that. You mess with a bull. Bulls kill people, man.
Come on, man.
Are you kidding
That's
me?
why you have certain clauses in your contracts, man.
That's right. Jump over a bull.
Would you do it? All right. You've answered the
I'm
question.
not even going to a farm, bro, let alone jumping over a bull.
All right, man. All right, we're going to head down south now to check in Redskins and bring in my man, JP Finley from NBC Sports Washington. And JP, let's start with the quarterback situation down there. They drafted Dwayne Haskins. They trade for Case Keenum. Keenum will start against the Eagles. How soon do we see Haskins, though?
Gunnar, I'd like to start by saying I want to see you jump over a bull.
Never going to happen, my man. Never.
As for the Redskins quarterback situation, I don't know when we're going to see Dwayne Haskins. And frankly, there's a big portion of the front office and some of the coaching staff that would like to see Haskins sit the entire season and just learn. And they'll point to Patrick Mahomes as the most recent example, but you can go with Aaron Rodgers. A lot of really good quarterbacks have been well served by sitting on the bench for a year or at least 10, 12 games before they get in there to really learn the speed of the NFL. One of the quotes I always go back to about Haskins is all the way back to March at the NFL League meetings in Arizona. Jay Gruden was asked about Haskins. Now, this is before the Redskins had drafted him, but the coach was unequivocal that he said a guy with that little college football experience needs to be on the bench in the NFL to figure out the speed. Now Jay Gruden is coaching Dwayne Haskins. Haskins is no doubt about it, the most physically gifted quarterback the Redskins have. He has a cannon of an arm, and he made big strides running this offense from the first preseason game until the final preseason game. But still, Case Keenum, and don't forget about Colt McCoy. Both those guys give Gruden a better chance to win right now, and this is a coach with a lot of pressure on him. He wants a veteran passer out there.
All right, Pro Bowl left tackle Trent Williams refuses to play for the Redskins again after a medical issue was misdiagnosed. Will he ever get this issue resolved with his team?
As far as the medical issue, he's been cleared. He's healthy now. He's okay. As far as his issue with the team, I don't know how this is going to shake out, and frankly, the only person that does is Trent Williams. He's going to miss week 1. He won't be with the team in Philadelphia. We know that much. That Eagles front seven is vicious, and it's going to be a big problem for the Redskins not to have not just their best offensive lineman, but the best player on their team is Trent Williams. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's going to make at least $25 million in those 2 years. But very little of that cash is guaranteed. And we've seen more and more across the league that guys are holding out for new contracts. The problem in Washington is that Bruce Allen has a strict rule. He will not negotiate until you're in the last year of your deal. That means Trent needs to come back, play a few games, and get to January of 2020 before he and Bruce can have a different conversation. It became very obvious that Trent Williams, I believe, wanted a trade. But once the trade started happening and Clowney got sent to Seattle and the Texans acquired Laramie Tunsil from Miami, a lot of the big pieces, the spots you thought made sense for Trent, kind of got filled up. So at this point, I think Trent comes back to the Redskins, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think we're talking about Halloween, maybe late September.
All right, let's talk about Trent's head coach, Jay Gruden, heading into season number 6 for him. He's made the playoffs once since he's been at the helm of this team. Is this a make-or-break campaign for him?
You got to believe it is. And you guys played the clip there. Jay Gruden is always quick with a joke, and he's a funny guy. earlier this offseason, he said flat out, if I don't make the playoffs, I'm going to be fired. And he understands that. They haven't made the playoffs enough. I think there are plenty of people, especially around the NFL, that would argue that the Redskins are actually doing well with Jay Gruden, that considering the constant state of turmoil that engulfs this franchise, Gruden has been able to relatively keep the ship pretty steady. They haven't made the playoffs, but they've been about 500 the last 3 years, 2 7-9s and an 8-7-1 before that. I don't see them bottoming out like many do. I don't think a 4-12 season's coming, but I don't know that enough is going to happen for Jay Gruden to keep this job. I do think it's possible, like he predicted, that if they don't make the playoffs, he's gone.
All right, JP, we have a social media question for you. It comes from Joshua from across the pond in London. He wants to know, what's better for Jay Gruden's future, a 9-7 season with Case Keenum or a 6-10 campaign with the development of Dwayne Haskins?
I'm going to say it's 9-7. If you listen to Bruce Allen talk, he always talks about the Redskins are close. And Bruce Allen's the Redskins team president. He's under a lot of pressure for this team to win. If they go 9-7 and they get a wild card berth, and then they can spin it with all these young players they have on defense, and hey, Haskins got to sit for a year. Next year, it's his team. Keenum's only under contract for 1 year. So if Case gives you enough that he stays your quarterback all season and you make the playoffs, I think that lets Gruden stay on, and then it's Haskins' year next year, and the expectations will start to ramp up. Keep in mind that Jay Gruden has another year left on his deal, paying him $5 million. If the team makes the playoffs, I don't see ownership being in a hurry to fire somebody, pay them $5 million, and then have to bring in a whole new staff and cut them a whole bunch of new checks either.
All right, JP, thanks for checking in with us. We'll get your Redskins predictions later in this show. All right, time now once again to go back to our man Josh Norris with the Redskins to keep an eye on this upcoming fantasy season.
I believe in Darius Geis, the football player. I do not believe in Darius Geis as the fantasy football asset. He's going to be a bust in fantasy football in 2019. It's because where he's being drafted, like around that running back 26, 27 territory. I just don't believe the Redskins are going to be good enough to be able to support a top 24 scoring running back week in and week out. And I know they did it at times last year with Adrian Peterson. That's because they were able to create a positive and neutral game script because of quarterback play and good defensive play. Overall, I just think that the Redskins are going to be a lot worse. I understand if you took Darius Geis early on. I would wash that from your memory and play him when the Redskins are favored or even in close game situations. The issue, there might not be many of those in 2019.
Thank you, Josh. Redskins, Josh, you worried about either one of those teams in the NFC East?
Well, I'm worried about the defensive side of the ball for the Washington Redskins. At this point, they are really good up front. Their front seven is just as good as anybody in the league. Right. You know, a lot of Alabama players, you know, secondary, they went out and got Landon Collins. So they'll be good on the defensive side of the ball, two really good corners. But offense, both teams aren't at a point where they can really compete at the highest level with the Eagles and the Cowboys as far as being division champions. So, yes, I would say that one defense and nothing else.
All right, we go from one Gruden to another. John Gruden and the Raiders are set to begin their final season in Oakland. We had a first-hand look at the drama on HBO's Hard Knocks, and most of it surrounds star wide receiver Antonio Brown. First, it was the frostbitten feet, which happened after he was in a cryotherapy chamber. Then he refused to practice after the league banned his old helmet. Well, he's finally found a new one. But just yesterday, he posted this on Instagram, a letter from GM Mike Mayock notifying him he'd been fined by the team for missing parts of training camp. Really?
Right.
Did he not expect to get fined? Really?
Right, and especially with Mayock, you know. Mayock's an old school guy. You know, I worked with him for a couple of years, breaking down film for college guys. Right. And he's one of those guys, he likes to go down and really have his hands in something that he put his name behind. And that's one of the guys he brought in first. So, yeah, I would say he is mad, yes.
All right, while we're on the subject of the Raiders, let's go to NBC Sports Bay Area to our Raiders insider, Scott Barron. Scott, we're going to get to Scott in just a moment, but supposedly there's been some drama pertaining to AB out west. Supposedly, he may have gotten himself in a little bit of hot water getting into a verbal altercation with Mike Mayock, a good friend of ours.
He's going to give it to you, yeah. I mean, Mike going to give it to you back. He's not going to hold his tongue. For what? You know what I'm saying? He is not going to hold his tongue. In fact, he will come to Brown and give Brown exactly what he's thinking. I mean, if AB thinks that he's just going to say whatever he wants to say to Mike Mayock, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
You know, and he said, look, if I'm going to come in and be your GM, you got to make sure that I'm protected. And I really believe Gruden is going to protect him because both of those guys are cut from the same cloth. Yes, he is going to have to be responsible for them antics that he's doing right now. AB, come on, man, just play ball. I mean, he's a great player. Just play ball. There's a reason why he's not in Pittsburgh right now.
See, the thing is, when he was in Pittsburgh, he played for the Rooney family, and the Rooney family gives you a lot of room to make mistakes and recover and to grow from them. And because AB has been put on this pedestal, and let's face it, he is the premier wide receiver in the National Football League. He is just that elite. But at some point, he has to understand that the people who pay you are not going to continuously put up with your antics.
It's a team, man. Team first. And that's the Eagles. Eagles are a team. That's why they do well together. If he's not a part of that team concept, then what else can you do, man? You can't allow him to go out there with those type of antics.
All right, we're going to go out to NBC Sports Bay Area to our insider, Scott Bear. And Scott, you know, give us an update on this AB Mike Mayock situation, man.
Yeah, this is getting pretty messy, and of all of the Antonio Brown drama, this is the one that really belongs on a daytime soap. So what I can tell you right now with this still developing story is that yesterday, Wednesday afternoon, Antonio Brown and general manager Mike Mayock got into a verbal altercation that definitely got tense. It did not formally get physical, but they had to be separated a little bit, and Antonio Brown is now facing a one-game suspension to start this regular season. That's what we know right now. The Oakland Raiders have not formally suspended him, and that is an important distinction, but that is the expectation at this point.
You know, AB said he's all in, and obviously we hear something like this. How long will Gruden and Mayock put up with this?
Mm-hmm. It always goes back to that talent tolerance scale, right? The better you are, the more tolerant teams have to be. And Antonio Brown is a Hall of Fame talent, so he gets a very long rope, and he sometimes gets some of that superstar treatment. Now, I did hear you guys say that Mike Mayock is an old school guy, and that is absolutely right. And he will not tolerate some of the things that AB has done here, especially posting that fine letter on social media, I think was the straw that broke the camel's back, because he thought that everything had kind of wrapped up when he made that all in or all out ultimatum on the last day of training camp. Things had gotten better since then, but he still planned to fine Antonio Brown. That was not a threat. He was actually going to ask AB for $53 grand. So ultimately, when that ended up on social media, we saw that confrontation, and things absolutely went south from there. And this is not what the Raiders need at this point. And John Gruden talks later on Thursday. I think it will be interesting to see what he says there, because during this entire AB saga, from the feet to the helmet and on forward, John Gruden has been good cop and Mike Mayock has been bad cop.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. We're going to come back to you later as well and get your prediction on the Raiders. Now, once again, we send it back to our man, Josh Norris, on his thoughts on Raiders star wide receiver for this upcoming fantasy football season.
It's difficult to call a receiver that really has spent the last half decade as the number one or number two wide receiver in the NFL a bust, but that's exactly what I'm doing with Antonio Brown. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, we can kind of throw away the production that he's had in previous years with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not necessarily the talent. I obviously believe in the talent, but now he's attached to John Gruden. John Gruden created an offense that couldn't even support Amari Cooper last year during their 2018 season, and decided to trade him away. And he's also attached to Derek Carr. Derek Carr, who is a very different quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger, who in the face of pressure and disruption, when they break structure, decides to throw it to Jalen Richard and Jared Cook in those situations, which is different than Ben Roethlisberger, who loves to throw it vertically, who loves to throw it downfield when everything breaks down. And Antonio Brown's production, a lot of it comes from those broken plays, and I just don't think we'll see as many of them this year with the Oakland Raiders.
All right, Now we're going to go to the Ravens. They've already got the best kicker in the league in Justin Tucker, but during a recent joint practice with the Eagles here in Philadelphia, Ravens specialists gave U.S. women's soccer star Carly Lloyd a chance to boot one. She drills it from 55 yards out. That viral moment has actually prompted 2 NFL teams to contact Lloyd about kicking for them. Do you think we're ever going to see a woman kicker in the National Football League?
You know, I'm cool with women's right. I mean, I love the fact that she went out there and she competed. She can kick it farther than I can, so I can't say anything to that. And plus, if you look at it's in the narrow uprights,
sure.
So she has a leg and it's very accurate. But then, what if something goes wrong with, you know, the ball comes and they have to return it? I got to see then, you know, what's going to happen then. Do you hit her? Do you treat her just like any other NFL football player? Yes, she might get hit. So, you know, same thing make you laugh, make you cry, man.
All right, time now to head to NBC Sports Washington and chat with Ravens insider Andrew Gillis. Now, Andrew, this is Lamar Jackson's team. We all know that. He led the team to the playoffs as a rookie in large part because of his legs. Now, can his arm, though, take him to that next level?
Well, I think he can. You know, I think if you look at quarterbacks across the league in their second year, you know, Patrick Mahomes, you know, is a recent example. A lot of these quarterbacks grow in that second year, and I think you're going to see the same thing with Lamar Jackson this year. You know, he's got a lot of weapons on offense. They really went out. They tried to get him as much help as possible. They drafted Marquise Brown in the first round. They signed Mark Ingram in free agency. They drafted Miles Boykin in the third round. Mark Andrews is a tight end. He's going to be there for him. So I think Lamar is going to have tons of weapons on offense. I think Lamar Jackson's really going to take that step forward, because it's important to remember he only played half the season last year as a starter. He came in, they changed their offense for the Ravens. So I think that Lamar in a full season under this new offense is going to look really sharp, and I think he's going to surprise some people.
All right, Joe Flacco, Terrell Suggs have left town. They really feels like a new era in Baltimore. Can they continue the success they've had with what's left in town, basically looking at a whole new team?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm glad you brought that up. It's 22 guys on the Ravens' 53-man roster are either in their first year or their second year. So very, very new team in Baltimore, you know, especially at the skill positions. I think that's important to note. You've got a second-year quarterback. You've got 2 receivers, like I mentioned, on the outside that are rookies. You've got tons of youth in the secondary or in the front 7. You've got a lot of youth across that roster, and I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they manage that. You know, it'll be interesting in week 1. They've got so many new pieces, so many moving pieces, new offense, new guys coming in. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, how they do it with these new guys. Coach John Harbaugh said this week, you know, you don't really know until you get on the field in Miami on what team you got. So we'll have to see on Sunday. But yeah, definitely a new team in Baltimore.
Now, the AFC North has always had heated rivalries. Now you add the Browns to the mix, a team that has a ton of swagger coming into the season. Man, how entertaining can this division be this year?
Well, I think it's going to be the most fun division in football. You got the Cleveland Browns, you know, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham. You got all that talent, all that persona out in Cleveland. And then you got Pittsburgh. You know, everyone wants to discount the Steelers this year. It's hard to discount them with Ben Roethlisberger, with James Conner, with all those receivers, just the well that the Steelers keep going to keep building that team. And then you add in the Ravens. You know, the Ravens are nothing to look past either. They've got, you know, a very solid defense. Wink Martindale as a defensive coordinator is going to be able to shut a lot of that down. And then, you know, the Bengals aren't going to be bad, I don't think. You know, Zach Taylor is a coach. They're going to be able to do some things offensively. So even at the bottom of that division, I think you've got a lot of talent, a lot of fun, a lot of excitement that you're going to get from the Browns, from the Steelers, from the Ravens. I wouldn't be surprised to see the AFC North take 3 playoff spots in the AFC.
All right, Andrew Gillis down in the nation's capital. We'll get your predictions on the Ravens also later in this show. But right now, once again, our fantasy man, Josh Norris, has this on the Ravens.
In weeks 11 through 17 last year, Baltimore quarterback Lamar Jackson was the quarterback 8 overall in fantasy football scoring. He is absolutely a keeper and maybe even, and should be, a starting quarterback in your fantasy league. He averaged 23 attempts in those starts with just 13 completions. What fascinates me and what interests me, 17 carries per game in those starts as well. And we've heard some mixed messages over the last few weeks, right? Like, John Harbaugh said, well, I expect him to break the rushing record for quarterbacks. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson says, I'm going to throw more and pass less. Whatever it is, I'm most excited to see what Greg Roman has done this offseason, really cultivating and creating an offense around Lamar Jackson and his skill set. There's a chance he has 1,000 rushing yards at the quarterback position, which is a rarity nowadays in the NFL.
You know, we talk about how competitive the NFC South is, but I think this AFC North could be the division to watch this year.
No question. You know, it's the reason why they call it the black and brown, what is it, the black and blue division?
Yeah.
Because those guys are going to beat each other up. You still got Big Ben in Pittsburgh. He's still going to lead this team. They'll probably win the division. But then you have those two up-and-coming teams with the young quarterbacks with Baltimore and Cleveland. So it'll be Big Ben's division, but those two are definitely nipping at his heels.
All right, back to the AFC East we go. The Jets had a crazy offseason. It started with the hiring of Adam Gase, and this video of his press conference immediately went viral. Not for what he said, but for his eyes.
The crazy eyes.
Fill in the blanks. What do you think he's saying right now?
I'm going to get my GM out here and bring my own GM in. I'm going to go steal him from the Eagles. That's what I'm going to do. That's what he's saying.
You know what I think that look says?
What's that?
After what happened to me in Miami, I can't believe the Jets hired me. All right, we're going to go back to the Meadowlands and check in with SNY's NFL insider, Ralph Vacchiano. And Gase, he gets fired by the Dolphins, almost immediately gets hired by the divisional rival Jets, wins a power struggle with the GM who was fired. Is Gase worth that kind of investment and turnover?
That's quite a run that he's had since he was let go by the Dolphins. Obviously, they feel like he's worth that. You know, they think that many coaches in their second time around were much better coaches. Adam Gase comes with a stellar reputation for being an offensive coach. His problem in Miami was he really didn't have the personnel, in particular the quarterback, but a lot of people, including Peyton Manning, endorsed him as the right guy to come, get the most out of Sam Darnold, develop him. So yes, I think the Jets really have invested a lot in him. They believe they've made the right decision. We'll find out, because obviously history right now is not on their side.
Well, they spent big bucks on Le'Veon Bell, who was out all of last season. Will he produce like the guy we saw in Pittsburgh in 2017?
I think to an extent he probably will. I think it might be a little bit unrealistic to believe that he will step onto the field after a 20-month absence and suddenly be the Pro Bowl or an All-Pro that he was before. I think just naturally, even if he's feeling better and feels rejuvenated by the year off, I think you have to lose something with that year off that maybe takes you a few games to get back into. But I don't see any reason to think that he would suddenly lose it. He's still incredibly talented. He's still, got that ability to stop and start so quickly. He still knows football enough to be able to read defenses and find the holes. So I think eventually he will be that player. How soon he's that player, that's the big question for the Jets.
All right, Sam Darnold, third overall pick of 2018, had a ton of high expectations, had a solid rookie year. Does he take that next big leap in 2019?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. I think you saw at the end of last season, the last 4 games or so when he came back from injury, that he was already in the process of taking that leap, not just in the numbers he put up, but the composure that he showed, the ability to make things happen even when the plays would break down. And, Adam Gase has been really clear about this since he came and took over the Jets. He says he's never had a quarterback quite like Sam Darnold at this age. Obviously, he had Peyton Manning in Denver, but at this age, a guy with so much promise. He's never dealt with that before, and he's pointed right to the film. He said every time he looks at film of last year and sees a mistake that Sam Darnold made, he can find a similar play later in the season where he didn't make the same mistake. He's just so good at learning quickly and just figuring out this game. I think the Jets absolutely believe that they have a guy who maybe isn't going to be a top 5 quarterback just yet, but is going to step into that top 15, first half of the league and really be able to hopefully bring this team to the playoffs.
All right, thank you very much. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Ralph pulling double duty for us. We get his predictions on the Jets and the Giants coming up in just a little bit. Now, we go back to Josh Norris one more time for a big-time sleeper in the Big Apple.
Start by saying Chris Herndon is suspended for the first 4 games of the 2019 season, but that makes the tight end even more of a sleeper this year. Why? Well, during the preseason, he played every single snap with Sam Darnold on the field. That means he's the starting tight end for the New York Jets. The tight end position is super shallow. It is each and every year in fantasy football. And if he wasn't missing those first 4 games, I'd rank Chris Herndon as the tight end 9 overall in scoring. I would stash right now, Chris Herndon on your roster. Maybe play a Jordan Reed or Greg Olsen for those first 4 games. And the rest of the season, you really profit with Chris Herndon as a super sleeper this fantasy season.
How you feeling about the Jets?
At this point, I think they're going to be very balanced. With the new quarterback, he's going to take that next step. Darnold's a really good guy. I remember him being back in college, USC. He carried that team. On offensive side of the ball, Le'Veon Bell is definitely going to be a bell cow for him. And
C.J. Mosley.
They haven't seen anything yet. They said they haven't seen anything yet. Wait till this year. And he's been talking about it. I'm ready to see what Bell does. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, they got my guy, C.J. Mosley, one of the better linebackers in the league. So when you're that Mike linebacker, you can make some noise like him, you're going to have a pretty good defense.
All right, time to ship it up to Seattle now. A pretty quiet offseason for the Seahawks until a bombshell dropped over the past weekend. They acquired three-time Pro Bowler Jadeveon Clowney in a trade with the Texans. Now, Clowney on the field for the first practice earlier this week, rocking number 91, looks ready to roll, but he already changed the number from 91 to 90. What he wore in Houston, probably paid to get the price as well. Barrett, would you ever pay to get a jersey? It always fascinates me how players are willing to pay to get a jersey.
You know what? I had a player give me money for a jersey number when I was in Denver. I was there for camp. The guy gave me $5,000 to trade over. So,
$5,000?
Yeah, $5,000. So I gave him $77. I took the money. Yeah, I took the money. So what? I took it. He could have 77. Go ahead.
All right, let's go to Seahawks Insider now, Joe Fan of NBC Sports Northwest. And Joe, Seahawks had some legendary defenses with the Legion of Boom. Almost all the guys are gone now, but with Clowney, could they be that elite defense again?
Yeah, I see no reason why they can't. I think it completely changes the outlook for their season. And the big question a month ago was, do they have the pass rush talent? With Cassius Marsh and a questionable Ziggy Ansah leading your pass rush, that's a big question mark. And all of a sudden, Ziggy Ansah looks like he's ready to go. Week 1, hasn't had a setback in that shoulder. And you throw Jadeveon Clowney into the mix, the reigning 3-time Pro Bowler. Dwayne Brown says now that he's a 4-3 defensive end, 10 sacks should be easy. He's one of the best run defenders at the edge position. And to me, I think absolutely it changed the entire complexion of what Seattle throws out there on defense.
All right, Russell Wilson got paid big time earlier this offseason, put a lot on his shoulders now. Can he continue to carry this offense?
Yeah, I think he has carried this offense, and he'll continue to. And Pete Carroll said yesterday, going into year 8, Russell Wilson is playing his best ball of his career. You got to remember, last year, one of the most efficient seasons in NFL history, 35 touchdowns, and had 250 fewer pass attempts than Ben Roethlisberger, and had 1 more touchdown. The guy has been fantastic. Obviously, you know what he can do with his legs, but there's going to be times this year where they're going to have to lean on him, and he'll continue to come through. I mean, he's one of the clutchest players in the NFL. He's been fantastic throughout. I think Tyler Lockett's going to continue to take a step forward, and then DK Metcalf, they expect big things from him as well. And so between the running backs, Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, CJ Prosise, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett, there's plenty of firepower in Seattle's offense.
All right, who's going to be Russell's favorite target up there?
Yeah, it's Tyler Lockett. And what's crazy is just how efficient they were last year. An unheard of 158.3 quarterback rating was Russell Wilson had when targeting Tyler Lockett. That's unheard of, and a perfect passer rating to one guy. And they're going to continue to be the go-to guy. Just released a feature on Tyler Lockett this morning. He's ready to be the Seahawks' #1 guy. He doesn't care about being elite or being seen as a Julio Jones, but the Seahawks believe he can be just that. He was efficient in the regular season. He'll continue to be a stud for this team throughout 2019.
All right, Joe, I have a Twitter question for you. Chris wants to know, over/under on 1,000 pieces of gum for Pete Carroll this year.
Oh, you got to go over, man. That guy goes through, unless he's just keeping the same one all game. I imagine he's churning and burning all game long. I'm going to give the over, and I think it hits comfortably. All
right, Joe Fan, thank you for your perspective. Your prediction on the Seahawks coming up later in this show as well. Now, once again, we check back with Josh Norris to get his attention on which Seahawks he's looking at for the upcoming fantasy football season.
Chris Carson was one of my favorite picks in all my drafts this year. It absolutely makes him a keeper. Look, there were 15 new play callers this year in the NFL. Guess who has gone basically unchanged? It's the Seattle Seahawks. They want to run the football and then throw the football to Tyler Lockett. I love that lack of change. I want an offense that is predictable, and that's exactly what the Seahawks and Chris Carson bring us. Chris Carson was a top 5 rusher last season. He was a top 5 rusher in terms of yards after contact last season. There are actually 146 touches on the table with Mike Davis leaving to go to the Bears. I would expect Chris Carson to see another 80, 90 of those touches as well to go along with the volume he saw last year. Wouldn't shock me at all if we look back on the season and see Chris Carson as a top 12 running back in the NFL in scoring this year.
Seahawks, one of the better running teams in the National Football League in what has been a passing league. You like to see some of these teams get back to that ground and pound?
Run the rock. It makes you more efficient as an offense. Where you can go out there and dictate pressure on defenses, run the ball, and they can do nothing about it.
Sure.
It really puts you in a better position to win games because you control the clock, number one. You keep the pass rushers off your quarterback, number two. And then just pound the offensive line. We love to initiate contact. We want to go choke somebody. We want to hit you in the mouth. That's what you do when you're running the ball.
You keep using the word choke. You can't say choke.
Oh, my fault. You get to go out there. I keep saying,
stop it.
You can block people. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Drive block them, put them on the ground. That's what the offensive line wants. We don't want to retreat back, pass block all the time. We want to go out there, be physical, and demand some respect in running the ball. And when you're an offense that runs over 50% of the time consistently, it really puts defenses in a bind.
Just don't try to demonstrate it on me, man. All right? I hope you took your meds. Anyway, elsewhere in the NFC West, the 49ers entered this season with high expectations thanks to the man under center.
Hey, we got Jimmy Garoppolo right here. We're going to go practice training camp 2019. Let's go.
Left tackle Joe Staley.
Love that. Love that.
What is wrong with you offensive linemen, man?
Look, you have to have something wrong with you. When you go out there, and it says each play in offensive line is equivalent to a 20-mile-an-hour car wreck.
Yeah.
When you hit somebody a couple times,
yeah.
You know we ain't got it all, man. We ain't got it
I just want to take a moment to thank you because I finally agree with you on something.
He would agree on that.
You know,
how come you don't yell for your co-host like that?
What?
Woo, B. Brooks, woo! You don't get excited for me. You saw how he was excited for Jimmy.
Hopefully
Be excited for me.
Hopefully the meds will soon kick in. All right, now let's go back out west and check in with Matt Maiocco, 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. Hey, Matt, a lot of hype surrounding Jimmy G last season. Tears his ACL. Can he still reach the heights of what many has expected of him ever since he arrived out in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that we really don't know what he's all about. When you think about it, this will be his 6th NFL season, and he's only made 10 starts, 5 of which came at the end of the 2017 season with the 49ers when that horrible year kind of turned on a positive note, and they won 5 games, and that prompted the team to sign him to the long-term contract, 5 years, $137.5 million. So they kind of put the flag in the ground and said, this is our quarterback of the future. This is the franchise guy. And then last year, only the 3 starts before the ACL injury. His offseason was a little bit up and down, but he ended it on a good note on that 3rd preseason game where the starters played most of the game, or at least half of the game. Garoppolo looked like the Garoppolo at the end of 2017. So the team enters this season very optimistic about having the quarterback that can lead them back to the playoffs.
This is year 3 for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Is the pressure starting to mount on the coach and the GM?
Well, when you look at it from the lens of they were both hired, first-time head coach, first-time general manager, to 6-year contracts, that tells you right there the team management knew that this was a really tough rebuild. So this is the 3rd year, but certainly after 10 wins in the first 2 seasons, you want to see more victories. And this is the best team they've had. This is the most depth they've had. So it's time to start winning games, or a lot of that trust will start to evaporate.
Defense added some big names. Nick Bosa with the 2nd overall pick. They traded for D Ford. They signed Kwan Alexander. Can this be a top-tier unit?
I think it can be. The pass rush was kind of the fatal flaw of this team in the past. They didn't have anybody on the outside. Now with those players you mentioned, Ford and Bosa, and you already have DeForest Buckner, probably the team's best player on the inside, this team has a chance to be a much better unit. Where they have to make a difference is in the takeaway battle. Last year, the worst team in the history of the NFL with 2 interceptions for the entire season. The worst team in the history of the NFL with only 7 takeaways the entire season. They need to generate takeaways and put Jimmy Garoppolo in that offense with good field position, with shorter fields. And so that's how I think this defense can make its biggest mark.
So the unit has nowhere to go but up from here. Now, Matt, we have a Twitter question for you from Andy. Without a true number 1 wide receiver, who will likely step up to be that guy?
That is a good question, Andy. And of course, there's George Kittle, so he will be their #1 receiver, though he's a tight end. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a different wide receiver almost every week be the top guy between Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin. But the rookie is someone to keep an eye on, Deebo Samuel. They took him in the 2nd round. They expect an immediate impact. I don't know that he'll be an every down player. I think they'll kind of work him in with different packages. But ultimately, I think Deebo Samuel will be the best wide receiver on this team.
Matt, thanks for checking in with us from the West Coast. And, of course, we're going to get your 49ers prediction in just a moment. Now, one final time, we get to go back to our guru, Josh Norris, for a Niner to consider this season.
Kyle Shanahan has not been nice to Dante Pettis this preseason, telling him he has to earn his playing time, playing him until the 4th quarter of preseason games. And because of that, he has turned Dante Pettis into a sleeper and, to me, a tremendous value in all of our fantasy drafts this offseason. And I could be wrong, but I believe that Dante Pettis, despite all that talk from his head coach, will ultimately be the 49ers wide receiver 1 starting week 1 and heading throughout the season. And I believe that Dante Pettis has a chance of catching 100 footballs, 1,000 receiving yards this year. I know that's bold, but I love Dante Pettis for the 2019 season.
All right, Josh gave us all kinds of players to keep an eye on. Last year it was Patrick Mahomes, who took the league by storm, winning the league MVP. I doubt if we see that level of surprise this year, but who do you think may catch some people off guard in 2019?
Well, it won't be a surprise here in Philadelphia, but I'm going to say D-Jax. I think he goes out and gets the crown of one of the #1 receivers in the league. At this point, we have so much of talent around him that now you have to pick your poison on which guy you want to stop on those Eagles offense. They love the tight end down here, which is going to open up and bring everybody in a little bit, which will give D-Jax a chance to go over the top. So I see him probably getting close to 1,000 yards this year, and he's going to average probably around about 22 yards per catch.
You know, it's funny how the running back had been shunned aside until recent years, and then we start to see them elevate in terms of draft. They always say, you don't draft a running back that high. Well, you look at what Dallas did with Ezekiel Elliott. You look what the Giants have done with the Saquon Barkley. Now, those are special talents. There's a whole lot of good backs in the National Football Leagues, but those are exceptions to the rule. So I think we're going to see some incredible numbers from running backs in 2019.
Yeah, Mac, when I first got in the league, everybody had great running backs. You know, I played with 2 my first year in the league. I had Ricky Waters and I had Charlie Garner. The year of his back is now, they're now reliable players. You know, they say have a short amount of time to maximize their playing potential.
Sure.
Well, now, you know, they understand this, and with that potential, you can have a really good offense with guys that can run the ball. So, yes, I do see, like Saquon Barkley, I see him having a great season, a breakout season, and I hate to say it, but Zeke the Freak down there in Dallas is going to have a breakout year also.
He's going to win his 3rd rushing title in 4 years. All right, last year, it was the Patriots who won it all for the 6th time. So, do they do it again this year? Here now is Tom Curran with his Patriots prediction.
The New England Patriots have been to the last 3 Super Bowls in a row. They've won 2 of those. Back in 2014, they won another one. It's been a hell of a decade. Will they end up where they usually do in the Super Bowl in Miami? I don't think so, not this time. They have too many question marks on their offense for that running game to compensate for it. And even though their defense is going to be one of the best in the NFL, I see them getting outscored in Kansas City by a Chiefs team that is chock full of offensive talent.
All right, here's how the fans voted on Tom's poll. There were a bunch of comments asking, hey, why not 19-0? Why wasn't that an option? You know, they're just simply spoiled up in Boston.
Yeah,
I can't take it anymore.
Man,
I'm tired of talking about the Patriots all the time, man.
Always getting that, man. Silver spoon, bro.
We got to break that streak, man.
Wait, man.
We did it once down here in Philadelphia. Have to do it again.
Why not us? Why not Philadelphia?
All right, now, here's Ralph Acciano's prediction with the Jets.
The Jets had a lot of turmoil in the offseason, bringing in a new coach, then a new general manager, and another big free agent spending spree that brought them, among others, running back Le'Veon Bell. This has been all part of their rebuilding project that they think is finally going to be finished this season. They're not quite a Super Bowl contender yet, but they are a playoff contender. Of course, they're counting on Sam Darnold, the young quarterback, to take the next step towards the elite quarterback level. If he does, there is no question this is a 9, possibly 10-win team. I think 9-7 is a good starting point for them. I think they're the second best team in the AFC East. Greg Williams, their defensive coordinator, coordinator will bring a new attitude and aggressiveness to their defense. They are done as the underachievers of the AFC East. This is finally the time where the Jets and Sam Darnold arrive.
Wow, Ralph putting it out there, 9-7. That's a lofty goal for the Jets. I mean, seriously, is there a team that can challenge the Patriots in the AFC East?
From the immortal words of Talladega Nights.
The immortal words.
If you're not first, you're last.
Right.
And as long as they're in the same division with those guys
Tom
up in New
Brady
England,
and Bill Belichick.
You're just talking about second place, man.
I'm telling you, man, somebody's got to knock them off the perch sooner or later.
So. Somebody eventually, man.
All right, now let's go to our Ravens insider, Andrew Gillis. Andrew, what's your prediction for Lamar Jackson and company?
So this year, I think that the Ravens, I think they're going to win 9 games. I think 9-7 is a fair record for the Ravens. When you look at their schedule, they play the NFC West, they play the AFC East. So New England's going to come to town. They have to go to the Rams. They have to go to the Seahawks. I think it's going to be a very tough schedule. I think Lamar Jackson is going to improve. I like what they're doing with that offense. The defense is underrated. They're going to be able to do very well. But I really, really think that with this Ravens offense, they're going to surprise some people. Will 9 wins get them in the playoffs? It just depends on how things shakes out. I don't think they'll win the AFC North, but 9 wins could get them in the playoffs. I think that's where they're headed.
Here's how the Ravens fans voted on Andrew's poll. Barrett, are they a playoff team again?
I think they are. I really think they are a playoff team. They'll go in. They're not going to win the division.
They lost a lot of talent on defense.
I know, man, but they're not going to lose the division.
Yeah.
They're not going to win the division.
Right.
But I think they sneak in, man. They're just good enough with the mix of run to pass with Lamar Jackson that they're good enough to get in at that wild card. But I think Big Ben and the Steelers win the division.
All right, so how would you stack the teams in the NFC North?
I would have to go.
AFC North, I should say.
I'm going to go the Steelers.
Steelers.
Then right there, then the Ravens are probably next.
Ravens.
Then Cleveland. And then Cincy's
Oh, you're not buying the Browns yet? You're not buying into the Browns? You're not drinking the Kool-Aid?
I think they might go 8-8, 500, 8-8. I mean, you can't talk about it. You got to do it, man. When I see them do it, I'll see. They've still got a lot of talent, the wide receiver position. Them
right.
2 LSU receivers are pretty good. But at the end of the day, you got to win it. You got to show me better you can tell me. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, the show me state. Show me better you can tell me.
All right, what about the AFC South? Our old pal Nick Foles leading the Jaguars down there. Can they leapfrog over the Texans and the Colts?
Deshaun Watson is still down there, and they're going to pass the ball a good bit. They went out and got them a starting left tackle, so he'll be better protected than he was the past couple of years. He's been a running back the past couple of years because this offensive line has been atrocious. They're starting to get things going, bringing in guys on those lines so they protect them a little better. I can say that they're going to be okay, but I still think at this point they're not going to be at a level in which they're going to beat Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's defense is too good, and they got Nick Foles down there. Nicky Six, that's all he does is score touchdowns.
All right, as we talked about earlier in this broadcast, of course, the Oakland Raiders were the stars of HBO's Hard Knocks. Then we found out a short while ago there's a little maybe disgruntlement between the star wide receiver and the general manager down there. So now let's go back out to the AFC West and hear Scott Bair on the Raiders.
I'm going to say that the Raiders will have 7 wins during the 2019 football season, but that's less of a prediction and more of an over-under line, and here's why. Because if Antonio Brown is suspended for Week 1 and causes problems with the locker room and with Raiders brass as a distraction, I think they're winning less than 7. If he comes back and performs at his Hall of Fame level, the Raiders could very well have more than that.
Here's how Raider fans voted on Scott's Twitter poll. Of course, I'm sure these votes were taken before news broke on Antonio Brown's possible suspension. I tell you what, it could be a total train wreck out there in Oakland if they don't have find some way to diffuse this situation.
They're going to have to, at this point. You can't let the inmates run the asylum. Yes, he is a great player, but he has to understand, man, it's a team concept. You got Derek Carr, a pretty good quarterback. Give him the ability to throw to his weapon. You can't, the best ability is availability. If you're getting suspended, you're not available, you're not going to win many games with your star player not being there.
Do the Chiefs win the division again?
It's going to be easy. I mean, they're going to win probably the AFC. Patrick Mahomes is just that good. The offense is going to be really good. At this point, you know Big Red. Andy Reid will put a great mix of plays to really highlight what they do well, and that's run the ball with Shady McCoy, throw it over the top. You know, so, yes, they will have a really good team. They run away with the division.
Run away? Don't forget about the Chargers now. The Chargers were pretty good last year.
Old Man Rivers is, like I said, Old Man Rivers.
Respect the old man in the game, man.
I love Old Man Rivers, man. He was playing when I was playing. So, yeah, I love him. But at the end of the day, those young guys, those young guns have come in, and they're starting to take over, man.
All right, time to bring it back closer to home to the NFC East and our own Reuben Frank kicking things off with the Eagles. Rube.
When I look at the Eagles' 2019 schedule, you look at the first 5 weeks. Now, they start out with the Redskins home. Week 3 is the Lions home. Week 5 is the Jets home. And then you're at Atlanta and at Green Bay in the middle there. If they can steal one of those 2 games and get to 4-1, getting into mid-October, the way the schedule is front-loaded, I think they're well on their way to having a big season. Now, they got to take care of business at home, but I really think 11-5 is the number. 12 wouldn't shock me. Anything less than 10 would stun me with the amount of talent they've put together. Who wins the division? It's going to come down to those 2 games against the Cowboys. I like the Eagles to win a division. I like the Eagles to get to the NFC Championship game under Carson Wentz. 11-5 and a deep playoff run for the 2019 Eagles.
We take a look now at Rube's poll, and this fan base here is expecting another Super Bowl run. Barrett, you buying it?
I've already drank the Kool-Aid. I've already told you the Eagles have probably the best offense going into this season as far as the balance. I love the fact they went out and picked a second round of running back in Miles Sanders. He's going to be good. They went and got somebody to stretch the defense and D-Jax. He's got all the weapons to be a really good offense. I see them winning the division. It's going to be tough going through Dallas, but yes, I've drank the Kool-Aid. I'm all aboard on Wentz's wagon.
I wouldn't expect anything less from you. All right.
I'm a homer.
Their week 1 opponent, of course, is the Redskins, so we go back to JP to get some insight on the skin season.
For the last 2 seasons, the Redskins have gone 7-9 and missed the playoffs. For better or worse, Jay Gruden has largely kept the Redskins hovering around 500, though just short of the playoffs. And for the 2019 season, that seems like where they're going to end up again. Maybe they go 6-10, maybe they go 7-9, but the Washington defense should be very strong, particularly against the run. They've got a really good young defensive line led by Jonathan Allen. Offensively, though, there's just so many questions about how they can score points. A very inexperienced receiving group might have to give way to the running backs. Darius Geis, Adrian Peterson, Chris Thompson. Those are the guys that might be able to churn offense for this Redskins team. But if they're going to win games, Jay Gruden has said he's very comfortable winning 20-17 or even 17-13. In the end, though, it's going to be about quarterback play, and the Redskins just might not be good enough. I expect Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, and Dwayne Haskins to all get starts this year, and one more time, the Redskins fall short of the playoffs.
I think apathy is set in for many Redskins fans, more so than optimism. Does it start with a loss with the Eagles against the Eagles on Sunday?
Of course. Yes. Eagles 1-0.
You calling a blowout?
Redskins 0-1.
You think it's going to be a blowout or a close game?
There's not going to be many blowouts. There was so much parity in the NFL, but I don't think they have it together in Washington at this point. You have some great defensive weapons. You know, Alabama, the pro-Alabama team is down there in Washington.
Pro-Alabama team?
Yeah, I mean, everybody from there. You know, Payne, Allen, Anderson.
Absolutely.
You know, of course, you know. So they are great down there on defense, but you don't have an offense to run it with.
All right, Ralph Vacchiano, break down the Giants for us as we head back up the turnpike.
The Giants are absolutely convinced they're a playoff team this year. I mean, they really do believe that in the locker room. The reality, though, is they probably will come up just a little bit short. I think with their rebuilt offensive line, you can count on a bounce-back season from Eli Manning. They do have some weapons, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram. Saquon Barkley, of course, is one of the best running backs in the league. But this is a team with a very suspect defense. They're going to score more than you think, but they are not going to be able to stop teams very much. And because of that, you're going to see them have essentially a mediocre season. I think they're going to be 8-8 in the playoff race in December, but not quite getting in when it matters at the end.
Wow, that's high optimism. Giants looking at themselves as
what team are they looking at?
Type team. But do you think the Giants, though, have the ability to make this division race even more interesting? And of course, we keep talking about it's the Eagles and the Cowboys, but could the Giants make things more interesting?
They have a dynamic player at running back.
Right.
You know, at that point, if you run the rock consistently and with their new look offensive line, they finally protecting Eli Manning, it will give them an opportunity. But they just don't have enough the receiver position. Like they said, they have a guy that's going to be out for 4 weeks. I don't see them going in and winning any of those 4 games that he will be out, and Golden Tate being out.
Right.
But, you know, at this point, defensively, I think their hamstring, their hamstring injury as far as their hamstring, that's their Achilles heel. They just won't do it. The Giants are done.
Love for the G-men.
Point blank. Gone.
Wow.
Gone.
All right, back to the Eagles. They're already flaunting what they've got. Literally, check out their offensive lineman in the ESPN body issue. As an old lineman, Mr. Brooks,
big is beautiful.
You'd like to see them getting some love?
Big, beautiful O-line.
That's a whole lot of ham hocks right there.
BBOL, yes.
What?
Big, beautiful offensive line. This is about time you guys start giving us some hype. You know what I'm saying? Big is beautiful. They're just bearing it all. That's a lot to bear, but yes, we're in shape too. We're just
what
round,
kind of shape?
That's all. They're round.
What?
Round.
You would do something like
round
that?
Round is a shape.
You would do something like that?
We're going to have a quick slant. We're a quick slant.
No.
6 o'clock.
No,
we're going to do a quick slant version.
No, I got to go home. If my wife wouldn't let me in the house if I did something like that, man.
Come on, D-Gun.
I'm calling your wife after this, man. I'm calling your wife. All right, hey, the Bears kick off the season tonight, of course, against the Packers. Will it be the start of something special, J.J. Stankovic?
So I tweeted out a poll asking fans how many wins they thought the Bears would get this year. 75% of the respondents said 11 or more. That, to me, is a little too high. This is a really good team. They're facing a tough schedule, and there are too many questions about Mitch Trubisky and how good he can be for me to expect them to match or go past their 12-win total from last year. So I've got the Bears going 10-6. I think that's still good enough for them to make the playoffs. This is a tough schedule, though. You get the Saints at home. You get the Rams on the road. Is your divisional crossovers. You have to play Denver on the road in week 2. That is traditionally a very difficult matchup for any team to go to Mile High Stadium and win there. And look, this is just, it's going to be tougher for the Bears when the target is on their back. And I think that is going to be something that this team is going to need to handle this year. I think they win 10 games, they make the playoffs, and they make the NFC Championship game.
All right, here's the poll that JJ's talking about. How do you see the NFC North shaping itself up?
Well, you know what? I see that. I mean, I really think the Bears are a much improved team. And anytime you're great at the defensive end position, Khalil Mack, he can make a person.
You know who I'm picking, right?
Of course.
You know who I'm picking?
Of course. You go with the cheeseheads, man.
All the way, every day.
There you go.
Yes, twice on Sunday.
They may not win a game against the Bears. The Bears are that good. Fundamentally, they're fundamentally sound.
What'd you say?
They're fundamentally sound enough that they may sweep the division.
I ain't talking to you, man. All right, real quick. NFC South. Who's winning the division? I saw you. Who's winning the division there?
That's going to be tough. You know, at this point, you look at it, man, there's some really good teams in that division.
Right.
And, you know, they have 3 possible teams, you know, with the Saints, you know, and Atlanta. And then you look up, you know, Turnpike up there in Carolina.
Sure. 3
really good teams,
right.
3 really good quarterbacks. And when you get at the quarterback position, it gives you an opportunity. So they may have 3 teams that might make it into the playoffs.
All right, time now to wrap things up out in the NFC West, starting with Matt Miyoko and the 49ers.
Well, the 49er fans have spoken. 36% say that they will win 9 games this season. 32% say 10 or more wins. So 9 wins puts them on the playoff bubble. Probably not. 10 wins gets them into the playoffs. And I think that's about right for this team. They opened the season with 2 very critical games. Week 1 in Tampa Bay, Week 2 in Cincinnati. 2 games that will really be pivotal for this team as far as the playoffs go. Week 1 against Tampa Bay, this is a game that sets up well for the 49ers. Their improved pass rush can put a lot of pressure on Jameis Winston. The 49ers had only 2 interceptions all of 2018. In 2019, they should get 2 interceptions at least in Week 1, and the 49ers should win that game in Tampa Bay and then move on to Cincinnati looking for a 2-0 start.
All right, here's Matt's poll. You buying the hype on Jimmy G?
No. You got to show me better. You can tell me. Jimmy G got hurt last year. they're going with the expectation of what he did when he was in New England, and then a couple of games he had when he got to 49ers. I can't see it. Even though their defense is improved, D Ford and that Bosa kid from Ohio State, the second Bosa kid from Ohio State, they can do that.
They gave Jimmy G a whole lot of money to be mediocre out there. Come on,
a lot
man.
of money.
He's got to produce somehow, some way. All right, let's get to the Seahawks lastly, and here's Joe Fan from Seattle.
All right, so the Seahawks' outlook in 2019 was always for the playoffs, always looking ahead to the postseason, really a wild card spot. But after the Jadeveon Clowney trade, I really think that changes the ceiling for what Seattle can accomplish in 2019. All of a sudden, they have the defensive firepower to go along with Russell Wilson, who I think will be an MVP candidate this season, and it adds at least one win to their outlook, if not two. I'm going 10-6 with a chance at pushing the Rams for the NFC West crown.
All right, here's the poll. The 12th man. They're talking about double digits win. They've made the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years. Do they make it 7 of 8, Mr. Brooks?
I think they'll win the division, but I don't think they'll win the division by having over 10 wins. I think they'll be 9 or 10 wins, but they still win the division because the division's not really good.
Oh, wait a minute now. The Rams won the division last year. You don't think they're going to win it again?
Oh, my fault. You're right. You're absolutely right. My fault. I had a brain freeze. I'm just thinking about Russell Wilson. That's all I've been thinking about.
Okay.
He's going to have a real good season this year. You're right. The Rams will win the division. They'll be sick and sneak in. Yeah. And make it there just above them.
All right, quick update on Antonio Brown's situation. Mike Mayock spoke a few moments ago. He said Antonio is not in the building and not practicing, and he doesn't have more information at this time. Wow. Not in the building?
He's that guy, huh?
All right, real quick, sir. Give me your Super Bowl prediction for 2019.
Eagles?
Yes.
Kansas City?
Kansas City.
The Eagles win another ring.
I don't bet against the Patriots until somebody knocks the Patriots.
Right.
I'm going to go Patriots and New Orleans. I'm sorry. I got to go New Orleans, man.
Come on now.
Drew Brees has got one more ring in him, man. I got to go. I'm sorry, but New Orleans. I know Eagles fans don't want to hear that, but I'm trying to be honest.
Join the Wentz wagon, everybody. Join the Wentz wagon. Put your money on it.
Be objective, man.
I am objective.
Stop being a homer.
I just think the kid can play.
I can't talk to you anymore.
The kid can play.
Thanks for hanging out with us on this show. For my man Barrett Brooks and all of our insiders across the country, I'm Derek Gunn. Enjoy the 100th NFL season. You buying. You make more than I do.
Lunch.
It begins tonight on NBC. Packers and Bears. Oh, my.
NFL, baby.